everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the I Am an Icon podcast. Today, I am so honored to have Lissa and Sara here with me to talk about the amazing work that they're doing with Maria's Voice. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. And thank you for giving us this format.
Of course. So I wanted to start off this conversation really getting into the story behind the amazing work that you're doing out in the community. So if you would mind, I would love for you to share your story with our audience about why you got started and what you're doing today.
Thanks, Bianca. Well, my name is Sara Silva. I'm Executive Director of Maria's Voice. This all began with this beautiful angel over my shoulder here, Maria. So she was my cousin. She's Lissa's daughter and Bill. And we lost her April 30th of 2020 due to an act of domestic violence. She was murdered by her husband in her home. And as you can imagine, that was a huge shock. And it became the backbone of the work that we do. So we work in honor of her. We work because we want to change the ending of someone else's story. And we work in our focus really now has become domestic violence prevention, that we realize with such a systemic issue affecting 1 in 3 women, 1 in 7 men in their lifetime, that we need to go beyond the first aid response, and we need to help cut this off before it gets to that point. So we're really committed to getting awareness, education, and safe action opportunities out to the community at large, because it affects more than we realize often. And the reality is that everyone knows someone with statistics like this, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's really where we've decided to respond to this, really tragic loss, and get to work and try to get this out to the community so that we can work in the prevention of this.
That's awesome. And I know even, when I first got connected and hearing your story, it was so powerful to me, as someone who understands the power of, turning a situation that, can be negative to us into something positive to help others is so powerful.
Boy, you've really said it right, Bianca, because turning Maria's story into a story of prevention is critically important. And talking about it. Maria was a hugely private person. And as her mom, each day I leave the house to go speak to people or to have the privilege of speaking with your audience on a podcast. I talk to Maria, who is the angel over my shoulder here, and say to her, well, honey, I'm going to be talking about you again today. I hope you're okay with that. You need to tell me if you're not okay with that. And every day I get the grace and the courage and the permission to go out and talk about Maria's story. Because who is more powerful to tell a story of love and a story of loss than myself and Bill as parents, Sara as a cousin, to our community who really wants to help us. So we know every day that our actions are grounded in a huge need to go forward. And we do that with the help of our angels.
And that's so awesome. And I mean, I would love to hear more too, just about how the community has came around you in support of, your loss, but also just behind the mission that you have. How has the community responded?
Well, that's really a great question too. We have been just really unbelievably supported. And I know, Bianca, that's not every family's journey, but it has been ours. We were, after Maria's death, we were really surrounded in love and support and by the Maple Grove police, who reached out to help us. They were critical in finding Maria. They searched for Maria as if Maria were their daughter. And in fact, the police reached out to us and said they were so sorry that they did not find Maria alive, because they were dedicated to a happier ending to this story. So we always say the first community outreach really came from the police. And I know that's not everyone's experience. So I am acknowledging that as a person of privilege and as a person of reality in our community today. I think the second area, Bianca, that was really so critical for our communities to support us was really our family and our friends. And they have been brave enough to listen to us talk, and they've been willing to share with their friends and neighbors as well our story, because making our story personal, Bianca, is really important. Maria's anybody's cousin, anybody's daughter, anybody's co-worker. She's anybody's granddaughter. She is your neighbor. So Maria's story is universal. And I think that's why so many friends in particular, people we can call our friends now because we didn't know them then, have reached out to help us. And then I think that third arm of that help has been the third arm of the community coming together, has really been like the city council in the city of Maple Grove and other cities that we were talking to, like the city of Bloomington, who really wants to work with us on prevention issues. So we're really resonating there in prevention, and we're grateful for that.
That's amazing. And I know even when I was doing my ride along yesterday with the Edina police, I mentioned you because I was like, they have an amazing video that you need to be talking to your police officers about, all of the city members, because this needs to be integrated within the system. This is an organization really, for me, grassroots and really on the ground and bringing their heart into things. And this is what needs to be integrated in those systems.
Yeah, Bianca, I mean, you just said it, that grassroots, for us, that's really where it started. Maria's story, she really, her story began as being missing, and the amount of outreach we had from the community volunteers coming to search for her. We actually got a call from the police officer who was leading the search committee and said, I don't know who you are or what you're doing, but you got to tell people to stop because we've got way too many people to coordinate to search for Maria. And I think that just really spoke to us so strongly early on that the power and the value of one life, again, Maria was a really private person. Just she wasn't into big things, and she was just such a beautiful hearted person though. And you just see how her life has touched so many people through the beauty of her spirit and the inspiration of us to move forward and really work in honor of her. So I think that was the beginning of this journey of just being blown away by the amount of response and support from total strangers, really. And the support came nationwide, and even internationally. You just can't undermine the value and this work is essential because these are people's livelihoods, and we certainly hope to make a difference so that they don't lose everything, right? We want to support this prevention effort a lot, so that it doesn't get to that point.
One other group in the community, I hope I can mention, because they come up to Sara and I all the time. And when we speak, and come up to Bill and thank my husband, Bill, who's our co-founder as well. And it's the survivors who come up to us and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you are doing. I didn't have anybody to tell my story to. I didn't have anybody to share my experiences with, but through the help of X, and they always tell you who it was. Could have been someone in their church. It could have been their best friend. It could have been a neighbor next door. It could have been, an advocate who helped them have the courage to leave their relationship. But our survivors always come up to us and thank us for the work that we're doing in the community. And I got to tell you, Bianca, that just gratifies us and motivates us to do more. Right, Sara? It's powerful.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful. And I do want to ask, prior to experiencing the loss of this beautiful soul, have you ever encountered domestic violence in your life at any point?
Well, I'll be really honest first, because I have an easy story. No, I haven't, and what a lucky girl I am, because I'm way luckier than 1 out of 3 women, right, who experience this in their daily lives. But kind of in retrospect, Bianca, I thought about women in our neighborhood, and I know it's not just women, it's 1 out of 7 men too. But I just think about way back when, when I grew up, and there were women in our neighborhood who were very isolated. They were separate from everyone else in their community. And when you went to their homes, or if I interacted with their children, you really knew that something was really didn't feel right in their home. It just felt so different than the home I grew up in. So I was very, very, very lucky to not have that experience.
Mhm. Such an amazing point of view too, of just like seeing, that isolation that happens in our community. We sometimes just like walk past it and ignore it, but there's some power in that.
Yeah. Well, I never experienced domestic abuse in my household growing up. I am a survivor of sexual assault, and through dating relationships previously, I've experienced abusive behaviors like stalking and other, um, you know, elements of signs of domestic abuse that, led me to, luckily with the support of people in my life, encouraged me and supported me in leaving those relationships, and I was able to get out. But I'm happy to say I'm in a loving, healthy, marriage now, and I'm so grateful for that, to have landed there. But I certainly see how easy it is to experience, and I certainly know a lot of women in my community who had similar experiences dating and in their relationships. So it is all too common.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. That leads me into my next question around, because I know you all do a lot of work around being able to like give resources around what signs of a relationship aren't healthy. And I think more and more, even the young girls and women still need to understand like what are the signs of like an unhealthy relationship. So I would love if you can talk a little bit about some of those signs, and also maybe some resources that young women can really go to be able to know what those signs are.
Great. Oh, it's a great question because not knowing the signs of a unhealthy relationship or even yet a signs of domestic abuse are really critical to our community to get your hands around this, to really understand what are some of the key red flags in an abusive relationship. Is that what you want me to talk about? I believe it is. Yeah. So one thing I really want to bring up, because I think it's really where things start, and that's with isolation. And, an abuser really needs to feel that they have to keep this person under their own power and control for their own benefit. And in order to do that, they have to really keep you away from your family, your friends, especially your key support system. Who is it in your life that you share things with and that you talk to about? And as a personal story here, Bianca, Maria's abuser, one of the first things he said to her that Maria shared with me is, Maria, do you have to talk to your mom every day?
Mm.
He didn't like it that we were really close and that we were on the phone talking, or that we would, share a lot of our personal relationships and what was going on in our life with each other. Because you can't have power and control if you let a person interact with their family, their friends, their coworker, their book club. So having that kind of basis of isolation where it pulls you away from other people is critical red flag. In my book, critical red flag #1 to really observe and to be aware of. So I like to put that right out there in front. Isolation is really a key sign of domestic abuse, or the possible presence of domestic abuse.
Mm. That's such a good point of just, someone just that comment of, do you have to talk to your mom every day? Not, having that trust or that insecurity from that person, not wanting you to connect with someone who you trust and feel safe with, to me, and trying to take that away is definitely a red flag for sure.
Yeah. And I just want to say that it's really typical for these red flags not to be present early on in a relationship. that they can kind of start gradually and amp up. And and there's often cycles of abuse. So you can have a really positive phase and then things start to get rocky, or you feel like you're walking on eggshells to avoid an argument, or you feel like, oh, if I just do this one thing that they want me to do, then everything will be okay. Those are kind of some things where you feel like you're really concerned about doing the right thing for your partner to not set them off. And then kind of the common cycle is that it gets to kind of a boiling point where things are really extreme for a while, and then it kind of calms down, and then there's I'm sorry, and I'll never do it again, and or times of kind of peaceful times, and then just to kind of start that cycle again. So any experience you're having where you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling like you're not equal, like you're not being respected, you can't openly share your feelings or opinions, no matter what the facility is that they take to kind of undermine that for you, to keep you under that cycle of power and control. One of the really most common signs of abuse is financial control. So, leaving you out of financial decisions, giving you a limited allowance, to buy groceries, or, not letting you use the credit cards or debit cards, ruining your credit, getting you into debt under your name. And then the other aspect of that is really sabotaging your ability to get or maintain a job or career for yourself. Certainly in reflection, we saw that in Maria's situation as well. And that can, so many of these types of abuse override with each other too. Financial abuse can be coupled with technology abuse, where you get incessant texts while you're at work, and the expectation is that you respond to every text immediately, and that interferes with your ability to be present and to do your job, or showing up at your work and interfering, or causing an all-night fight, so that when you're getting ready to go to an interview the next day, you're not able to show your best self forward because you're exhausted from this all-night fight that just happened. So like I said, these things can show up in a huge variety of ways, but it boils down to, you not feeling safe, respected, able to share. You feel like you're trying to please and concerned with not setting off your partner. Those kinds of things are really big red flags.
Wow. And I feel like that is actually so common just in today's world, like you said, as one of the top red flags, because so many women are not taking even advantage of the resources that their jobs try to provide, of like, are you even feeling safe? But like you said, at home, like they're causing you to have lack of sleep and all those things that may not look like a red flag, but it definitely is. It is taken away from your well-being.
Just a personal story here, Bianca, if it helps. We found out actually through the police, through someone a former employer who called the police when Maria was missing, that her husband had caused her to lose her job. He called in for her sick so often that she lost her job. And the impetus behind that was for him to have power and control over her, even in their work environment. That he said, oh, your job is worthless. You can just make so much money with me, because he owned his own business. So therefore she was with him 24/7. So she did not even have the opportunity to go to work. She was working, quote, with him. But we know now, Bianca, that wasn't it. He just couldn't allow her to have friends and to have a career and have joys and successes outside of him. So it's really about their power and control, whether it's financial, physical, sexual, with your computer or with your login information, with your credit card. It's really, how do they encompass your life in power and control and diminish you. And that's really what this is about.
it just makes me think too of with your point of, so many women going through this for years and years. Why do you feel it takes so long to even have the realization, or, there's some women who don't ever get out of those situations, and they lose so much, unfortunately, valuable time for themselves and their growth. Why do you think that is?
I think what you have to understand is the abuser is manipulating that person for their benefit. So they're going to use many tactics, whether it's really milking that kind of peaceful period and it's not bad all the time, or, I have a history, I was abused as a child. I think what we see from people is that many victims, which actually we're moving away from that term victim because I think it defines a person, and it's not a definition many people want to jump to, and it really kind of takes away their humanity. So we like to say a person who's victimized, which really keeps the onus on the abuser who's choosing that behavior. But that when abusers, they're doing anything in their power to maintain the situation that really is beneficial to them. So that can be, keeping them in a state of fatigue, right? Like you talked about that sleep loss. You don't have your friends to reach out to. You don't have the financial means to get out and support yourself or support your children if you have children in the mix. And all of those aspects. Many people in these relationships have a lot of empathy. The people who are victimized by abuse are often very loving, understanding, caring, empathetic people. And that's taken advantage of by the abuser. And so I think the message we want to get out to people in these situations is that, the abuser is choosing this behavior. As much as you might understand where it's coming from, it is not your responsibility to fix that person or to make them change. That is the responsibility of the person who's choosing that behavior. And I would not encourage people to stay in that relationship. So it is a big mix of why people stay, why people can't leave. Certainly there's positions of power exploiting your language barriers, your citizenship status, if you're able or disabled, and you've got power and control from a caretaker, if you're elder. There's a whole slew of factors that inhibit people from getting the need, getting the help, getting the resources, and just getting the strength to get out safely, because that can typically be a dangerous thing to attempt.
Well, I think that's such a powerful message too. It's like, it's not your fault. You're
Not your fault.
that decision. And I love how you change even just the outlook of victims, because sometimes, we unfortunately who are being victimized could put ourselves, may feel weak or this and that, but it's like, it's not your fault. They're choosing to make these decisions, not you. I think that's such a powerful message.
And you deserve to feel safe and respected in your relationship and in your home.
Yep.
Bottom line, you deserve that.
That's so true. Such a good point. Very powerful.
And we really can't underestimate either, and we've spoken to it and around it, but I want to use two words. You can't underestimate, and why don't people leave? Because we get asked that question all the time. When we're at events or we're publicly speaking, people will come up to us with the best of intentions and just say, I just don't understand why women don't leave. Why don't people who are victims leave? Why don't they just walk out? Well, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to understand. I have a hard time understanding it too. Maria was privileged. She had a car, she had money, she had a family who had money and homes. She could have come home. I think what we don't really totally understand, Bianca, is the effect of trauma and turmoil in people's lives. The short time Maria was married, her life was very filled with turmoil. It was never consistent. It was, like Sara said, there was little brief periods of honeymoon, and then there's this outburst, and then there's a honeymoon, and then there's an outburst, but it's roller coaster. It's never really a straight line of, wow, we're on this path together and we're achieving something together. So the effect of turmoil and trauma is really huge in a person's life. And it's really integral to the abuser that they kind of mess with your head. They mess with your mind. They turn you around. They make you doubt yourself. They make you doubt your own self-esteem. They make you doubt that you can really be the person that you want to be. And all that contributes to your trauma. So it may look to the outside world, gosh, Maria Pugh, you're degreed and privileged. Why didn't you just leave? Trauma and turmoil are huge in the control and power wheel of domestic abuse.
Even that manipulation of, them constantly, like you said, telling you that you're not, worth this or that. And it's, to me, it's just, wow, it blows my mind. Mm. Wow. Do you think there's ever hope in relationships, that unfortunately suffer from abusive, an abuser is deciding to, make a change?
I think that's really a journey that that person needs to go on. And like I might have mentioned, it is not the responsibility of the partner to fix that person. Often people who are in abusive relationships feel like they're incredibly strong people to tolerate these kind of abusers who don't know how to deal with their anger or stuff like that. It's not the situation. So it's not their responsibility to fix. And I would really encourage people to get out of that relationship until that person has taken responsibility and made some significant changes and, really taken responsibility for their actions. So that's a whole journey that I fully encourage people to go on if they're able to self-reflect and take responsibility. That's wonderful. And I do believe people have the ability to change, but that really takes a strong person to choose that. And I would say that it's not for the person to stick around and be there for that process. And that's my opinion. Okay. I'm just fully owning that that's my opinion. So again, I think everyone deserves to feel safe and respected in their home. And if you need a little space in order for that other partner to go on their healing journey, then they need to take that time to do that themselves.
Yep, I fully agree. I mean, I like how you said, even, that person taking that time and do their own self-reflection.
Yes.
You don't need to be in that. You have suffered enough trauma. Allow that person their own space to reflect and really see how, they've hurt you, but also hurt themselves. And then you getting out of that space, because it's not gonna, what I've even experienced from my own personal relationship when I was dealing with it, it took me to separate myself from that, because a lot of what the abuser was dealing with had nothing to do with me anyways. From the get-go, I was just the, person receiving all of the bad end. And so understanding that I need to separate myself. I am not the one that needs to even invest all this time in trying to make sure that you're good. You have to take initiative.
Yeah.
That's such a strong viewpoint. It really is. It's really putting the responsibility where it should be, and I really, that's such a powerful thing to say, is that person has a responsibility for their own behavior. Maria always felt, oh, mom, I can help him. I married him for better or for worse. I made this pledge in front of God to be a helpful partner. And so when we did have those relationships, I'd say, wow, Maria, he's also got a responsibility to be his best person himself. And I really encourage you to think about that. That's his responsibility.
Wow. And that just shows, even just for Maria, how beautiful a soul she still is. And, that her saying that is coming out in the work that you guys are doing, and to have that light shining, but her, the dedication to, someone who was, harming her. And to me, like, it's so powerful. And it really does give me chills that, I think the work that she had internally is coming through you guys. And to me, that's so powerful. It's so powerful, and it's a blessing.
Thank you.
I do want to know, so kind of going towards what you guys also talk about, which I love, the positive attributes of relationships. Can we talk a little bit about like what that looks like, the positive pieces of like, because people, I feel like even in my community, we don't see that very often or know what that should feel like and understand that they can happen, that they are real,
Yeah.
you exist. And yes, of course, we have our disagreements and stuff, but relationships can be positive. That is something
Yeah.
that can happen.
Well, that's something we really believe in and is part of how we operate as an organization. You know, of course, we need to name that we want to end and prevent domestic abuse, but that kind of creates a vacuum to fill that space with what do we want to happen, right? Not just what we want to stop happening, but what do we want to happen? So we have that in our mission and in our pledge that we believe everyone has the right to a safe home and equal healthy relationships. And some of the ways that I describe those red flags for an unhealthy or abusive relationship can just the opposite be those green flags for healthy signs of a relationship, right? Feeling safe to share your emotions, feeling like your opinions are respected, feeling safe physically, right? Being seen as equal in your relationship. You know, just having that trust with each other that you feel like, you know, you can share and you can be and you have your freedom in that trust, that you're going to respect each other. Yeah, just being able to talk openly and really importantly also, you know, speaks in response to that isolation piece is that your relationship supports you in having friendships and other positive relationships in your life. So that's part of a healthy lifestyle is having friendships and having other positive relationships outside of your intimate relationship.
I love that of just like feeling safe, knowing that like you can be yourself, say what you feel when you need to, and just
Yeah.
feeling safe all around, like physically, mentally, financially, all those things.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Especially when finances are involved, to feel like that's something that you can approach together, that you have a say, that you have, that you have a part of that decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And being valued for your true self. Who are you and how do I value and celebrate just who you are as your true self? You know, not you in makeup and stilettos, which we all might want to be at times, but how do we just celebrate your true self? You know, the self that you are, that you come to the table with every day or you go to bed with at night. How does that person honor who you truly are? And how do you give it back to that person, to their true self too? That's a sign of a really good relationship.
Yes, I love that so much. I only get dressed up when I'm on here because I'm like,
Us too.
exactly on the Zoom call. So with the work in the field of like domestic violence awareness, are there any challenges that you feel you're experiencing in this field?
Oh wow. Well, thank you for that asking the gorilla in the corner question. Boy, I'm going to speak on one, and I think that's just the silence. You know, the silence surrounding domestic abuse, and just having having a conversation about it. You know, our society has such taboos about talking about um, what happens in people's homes. Can we talk about that honestly and openly? Can we talk about perpetrators and their responsibility to own their behavior and to do something about it? Can we talk about the fact that domestic violence is preventable? We can prevent this. You know, we don't have to endure it, we can prevent it. So the silence surrounding it has really been one of the biggest challenges in working with domestic violence. And it's one of the things that we put at the top of our list is to normalize this conversation, just to have an open conversation, friends, family, churches, each other, our own relationships, parent to child, no matter what age that child is, to really normalize the conversation about respect and health in order to combat the prevalence of domestic violence in our society.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, silence definitely is key. It's key to, it takes us away from, sometimes people think they're doing justice by being silent, but it's not. Like, this is something that has to be voiced. It's one of those
Yeah.
situations you have to speak up.
Yeah, there's a quote that just comes to me so often when we talk about this because, well, it says, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men, but we can say people, to do nothing. And that quote is often attributed to Edmund Burke. But, to stay silent for good people, to stay silent in the face of abusive behaviors, and that could be in our friendships, that could be in our extended families, people who choose to abuse, they rely on people staying silent and tolerating that behavior. So our hope in our work is that through our Pledge Network, which is an education program for domestic violence prevention, that we can empower people on our 3 pillars of awareness, education, and safe action, right? We need to understand what the problem is in the first place. We need to know the signs of it, and we need to know safe actions to take in response to it. And with getting that information, that we are all empowered to use our voices to speak up when we hear objectifying language or see objectifying behaviors, and say, you know what, I don't think that joke is funny, or I don't appreciate how you're talking to your wife in front of us, that we don't like that behavior, and calling it out. And I know that can be really scary. It can make you feel like it might be an unpopular thing to say. But it's really important for us to kind of hold each other to our best selves. And I think that's that societal change that we're seeking to end the tolerance of domestic abuse.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, of just calling it out, speaking up, even, if it may not, for the woman may feel uncomfortable, but in the end of the day, I know she would value someone standing up and giving her, giving that voice for her, because she may not feel like she has that. And I think in a lot of situations too, where what I've noticed, even in my own personal relationship, when I had friends who, I would talk to about my situation, and they would just like disappear, and I don't know if it was because it was overwhelming on them. And I would think about, and I was just talking with someone who was, asking for advice on what she should do for her friend. And I was like, you can step back in a certain degree, but never stop being a voice, because if you go completely silent, that just puts that person in a deeper, struggle. And for me, it's like, whether you send a text message or something, you don't have to be physically present. But I think you never want to go ghost completely. And I've
Yeah.
unfortunately had friends who have gone ghost on me because, they know they can't do anything about my situation. But little do they know, those simple little text messages or phone calls or whatever goes a long way. So like, my thing would be, never go ghost on a friend. And I know it could be heavy and things, when you feel like you can't impact the situation and feel out of control of it, 9
Mm-hmm.
out of 10 you are, but like, don't ever go ghost on your friend. Keep showing some support, whether it's at a minimum, but never stop. Mm-hmm.
And gosh, that is such a great advice. We've heard from so many survivors, Bianca, that it was maybe the random text, the person just being committed to keeping the lines of communication open with that person, that really at one point in time, at that critical point in time, said, oh my gosh, I'm valued and I'm loved and I can do this. I can be the person I want to be outside of this relationship. And sometimes it was just that one random text, that one random piece of communication, hearing from someone that they are loved and valued, that made a huge difference at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I would never forget the words of a text message that I had, and they said, you could be deceased. And that was enough for me. When I heard that word, I I just like fell out of my body. I thought about my
Mm.
children, and when they told me that, and I would hear stories, but until it took someone close to me to say that, that's when my shift had really happened, for me. So I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing and really promoting for people to not be silent, and I love that so much. So, coming to our end, I always love to ask my guests who are the icons in their lives. And as you know, I've talked about what icon means. I can overcome negativity. So, I always love to ask people who have been the icons in their lives to share with our audience because, as we think about that, I want, our guests to continue to think about those icons and stay close with them. So, I would love to hear from you who are the icons in your life.
I'll
Go ahead,
start real
Lissa.
quick because mine's pretty general. Negativity, unfortunately, is kind of all around us, right? So we have to kind of choose what we want to prompt our life with. So my icons are really broad. They're people who don't let others or barriers or preconceived ideas define them. So my icons are people who some of them are famous, and some of them who are just our everyday heroes and sheroes who let us grow and find our identity and find our place to thrive and to be successful, and who help us when we're down, who hold us accountable to being the best people we can be. So mine were my aunties in my own personal life. I had two really extraordinary aunties who were wonderful people, who were very unusual women for the time, who inspired me to be the best person I can be. And my mom and dad, they're really my icons. They started businesses. Actually, my grandmother said to my dad, can't you just get a real job? Because he was an entrepreneur and he had I don't know, I think he probably had 4 kids at the time. He went on to have 8, but his mother said, can't you just get a real job? So, so he was really a hero in my eyes. He really stepped out there and he stepped past negativity and preconceived ideas to offer his family this amazing life that he provided for them. So, and with my mother's assistance and help, they were very, very, very successful. So they were good parents and great community members. So those are my icons.
That's awesome. I love it.
Well, the icon that just always sticks out for me, who's just feels like an old friend, ever since I read one of her most famous books as a teenager, is Maya Angelou. And I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings as a teenager, and it was so profound to me. And through all of her, oh my gosh, many varied life experiences and traumatic events and ups and downs, and she has just overcome with strength and fearlessness and just her belief in her worth, and that her ability to adapt, to always just go after her dreams, to support and just lead with love. And she just always comes to me as somebody I admire, I pull strength from and inspiration, and I reread that book every couple of years for a lifetime. It's just she's just one of my favorite people and most precious to this world.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your icons with us. And you all, I will be including more information about how to get connected with the work of Maria's Voice. And ladies, it's been such a pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing the work that you do with us.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you for leading with love and just bringing us together. And it's just been a huge joy to meet you and get to know you more and be involved in this work together.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being our icon. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Thank you.